Any parent will tell you how indispensable a really great babysitter is. After all, everyone needs to get out from time to time. It's pretty stressful if you live far away or don't have any family to look after your little one on the odd occasion. Then you may be forced to look for a trustworthy babysitter in the area, but how do you know who to choose? This was exactly the conundrum Claudia Sorhaindo found herself in when she looked at a photo of her daughter and immediately froze. Claudia Sorhaindo lived alone in Florida with her young daughter Ava. She tried her absolute hardest to be with Ava at all times, but being a working mom meant that wasn't always the reality. Work already meant that Ava had to go to preschool every day, and then an email arrived from work detailing an out-of-town meeting she simply couldn't miss. She wouldn't be able to take Ava along with her, and that was a problem for which she had no solution. Claudia felt trapped between a rock and an impossibly hard place. She'd been managing quite successfully with being a single mom working a full-time job, but that was before she was promoted and needed at faraway business meetings. This was her first big meeting, and it wouldn't reflect well on her if she was to miss it. Besides, she'd already taken all the leaves she could, what with Ava being sick last week, so she had no choice. It was time to call on friends and family alike, but she knew everyone's schedules were as packed as her own. She hoped against hope that a responsible adult would be available to babysit Ava this weekend. Luck was not on her side, and the only person that could do her job was far too young for Claudia's liking. It was her sister's suggestion that Jan, her niece, took care of Ava for the weekend. Claudia had hired a babysitter before, and it hadn't ended well. The problem wasn't that her sister's daughter wasn't experienced enough. She had in fact looked after many children, but it's different when it's your child, and she couldn't shake the feeling in the pit of her stomach when she thought about it. Claudia knew Jan well, but she didn't know the choice she was about to make would change her very life. Time before the trip was running out, and Claudia had to make a choice now. Nobody had been able to commit to looking after Ava, and the time to make a decision had come. Her choices were to risk her job by missing the trip or let her 15-year-old niece watch her precious daughter. She would come to regret her decision, she just didn't know it yet. Jan arrived a little early, always a good sign, but it still wasn't enough to calm Claudia as her mind played and replayed all her unknown fears. Jan knew the house well, so Claudia just ran her through the essentials, where the baby food was stored and how to make it, the diaper room and all its bits and bobs, before handing her niece an extensive list of emergency numbers. Numbers that would prove useless when she was so far away. She was soon in a cabin before she knew it, boarding the plane. Her worst moment yet was switching her phone to flight mode, cutting herself off from any news. It was a long flight, but Claudia counted the minutes until they were due to land. She tried to focus on preparing for the meeting, but her mind kept drifting to her daughter and whether she was okay or not. As more hours passed, she got more anxious about her still lifeless phone. It was a full flight today, with passengers jostling each other to get their carry-ons in the best possible place. The tight space made Claudia feel a touch claustrophobic, and she loosened her collar to breathe easier. The tight space and crush of people weren't doing much to relieve her nerves, and remembering Ava again gave way to rising panic. She just wanted to arrive already to find out what Jan was doing at home. Finally, the plane was descending. She had her seatbelt fastened tightly as she prepared for landing. With a bump, she was grounded again and finally allowed to use her phone. Turning the phone back on, she waited for the loading screen to pass and saw a text message blink on her screen. It was a photo from Jan sent moments after she had lifted off, so in fact hours old. The small thumbnail showed something that sent terror through her veins. Ava's legs were completely wrong. What had happened? Claudia's brain couldn't figure out what was happening to her baby in the picture, and she was trying not to panic as she opened the thumbnail to get a better look. Seeing her baby look so odd, almost contorted, was the last thing she had expected. She needed all the information and punched the message on the screen to see what message Jan had written to explain it. She had some major explaining to do. The message seemed too mundane for the obscene picture that Claudia's brain had been twisting and turning for clarity. The 15-year-old's message made no sense. She was saying something about wanting to make herself a sandwich. Making any food in the kitchen would mean leaving Ava alone for a time, albeit a short period. Unfortunately, Claudia's frazzled and overawed brain gave way to instinct, and she pressed the speed dial button for 911. Her daughter's legs were so severely swollen that she couldn't believe what her eyes were telling her. She'd never seen the pants she was wearing either. Her muddled brain just wasn't making any sense of the situation at all. Was it an allergy she didn't know about? Her mind raced through every terrible scenario before she clicked and looked closer. She'd made a huge mistake. Jan was actually being an astoundingly good babysitter. She thought about how protective her auntie was and figured that it wouldn't be okay to leave baby Ava alone for even a second, so she devised a solution to the problem. The problem-solving 15-year-old had made a makeshift kangaroo pouch from a pair of particularly stretchy pants, and little Ava was comfortably sitting right up close to the girl. It was a very out-of-the-box solution. Because Claudia couldn't figure out what was happening in the picture, her first reaction was to get a medical authority to her child as quickly as possible. She thought her daughter was in dire need of attention. It was only after the fact that she'd slowed down enough to make sense of what was happening on the screen And then she couldn't contain herself. Laughter spilled out of her mouth, drawing looks from all around the aircraft. The smart teenager had found a way to be the most responsible babysitter of all time and make herself a sandwich too. Finally, Claudia conceded that Jan was more than fully capable of looking after Ava. Relief washed over her as another giggle burst from her lips. Her niece certainly had the most original way of looking after a kid. Jan really did deserve recognition, and Claudia would make sure that she got it. Claudia took to social media to show everyone the sweet solution her niece had cooked up in the kitchen. So I asked my niece to babysit baby Ava. Later I received a text saying that Jan wanted to make a sandwich but didn't want to let baby Ava out of her sight. Lord send help, this was her solution. Creativity at its finest. Facebook was ready with their reply. Of course, such a funny picture was sure to go viral, but it's hit or miss which tone can take. Well, the whole internet was congratulating the creativity of the teen babysitter. What was even better was that Claudia had finally found herself a reliable and capable babysitter whenever she needed to be out of town. The comments on Facebook were overwhelming. Among one of the most frequent comments was in fact where other moms and caregivers could get those kangaroo pants. It was a much cheaper alternative to an expensive baby carrier. There were almost 300,000 likes and shares of the photos, and that sparked an idea. She was about to embark on an entrepreneurial venture on her own. Jan hopes to raise enough money to create her own Japans. Claudia, being the supportive aunt that she is, even started a crowdfunding page on GoFundMe to see if they could raise enough money for Jan to get her business idea off the ground. Now she just needs to get the business model right. As with all great ideas, everyone now wishes they were the one to think of it. Someone on Facebook commented, "Brilliant, carried my babies around on my hip in the 70s. I wish I had thought of this," while others say the idea had potential. Another user wrote, "You can make maternity pants that turn into this after. Get a patent on that. I see dollar signs." So does Jan. Of course, Claudia is now a super supporter of Jan's idea and of Jan herself. She'll never forget how grateful she felt when she eventually figured out the confusing picture. Ava was so well taken care of that she was never out of sight for even a moment. Needless to say, Claudia will never feel anything but confident about her niece babysitting for her again. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.